Hi everybody, how are you doing today? We are back for another Bible story reading, getting started a little late in the day. For those of you joining for the first time, what we do is we go through the stories of the Bible for people who have never read them, don't know what they are, maybe have only heard bits and pieces of them, or have forgotten them. You might be watching this video on YouTube. If you are, please hit the like and subscribe button. But we go live on our Facebook page, Get Clear Teachings, and then we upload to YouTube. So for those of you who remember, we've been going through the story of King David. Yesterday we ended with 2 Samuel chapter 19, where David has come back into reign of his kingdom after a brief stint of losing it to his now dead son, Absalom. But now he is back, and we are going to pick up from there. So we're going to start right away. We're just going to dive into chapter 20 of 2 Samuel. Now a wicked man, a Benjamite named Sheba, son of Bichri, happened to be there. He blew the ram's horn and shouted, "We have no portion in David, no inheritance in Jesse's son. Each man to his tent, Israel." So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah from the Jordan all the way to Jerusalem remained loyal to their king. When David came to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace and placed them under guard. He provided for them, but he was not intimate with them. They were confined until the day of their death, living as widows. The king said to Amasa, "Summon the men of Judah to me within 3 days, and be here yourself." Amasa went to summon Judah, but he took longer than the time allotted him. So David said to Abishai, "Sheba, son of Bichri, will do more harm to us than Absalom. Take your Lord's soldiers and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and elude us." So Joab's men, the Cherethites, the Pelethites, and all the warriors marched out under Abishai's command. They left Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. They were at the great stone in Gibeon when Amasa joined them. Joab was wearing his uniform, and over it was a belt around his waist with a sword in its sheath. As he approached, the sword fell out. Joab asked Amasa, "Are you well, brother?" Then with his right hand, Joab grabbed Amasa by the beard to kiss him. Amasa was not on guard against the sword in Joab's hand, and Joab stabbed him in the stomach with it and spilled his intestines out to the ground. Joab did not stab him again, and Amasa died. Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri. One of Joab's young men had stood over Amasa, saying, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, follow Joab." Now Amasa had been writhing in his blood in the middle of the highway, and the man had seen that the troops stopped. So he moved Amasa from the highway to the field and threw a garment over him, because he realized that all those who encountered Amasa were stopping. When he was removed from the highway, all the men passed by and followed Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel of Beth-Maachah. All the Berites came together and followed him. Joab's troops came and besieged Sheba in Abel of Beth-Maachah. They built a siege ramp against the outer wall of the city. While all the troops with Joab were battering the wall to make it collapse, a wise woman called out from the city, "Listen, listen, please tell Joab to come here and let me speak with him." When he had come near her, the woman asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he replied. "Listen to the words of your servant," she said to him. He answered, "I'm listening." She said, "In the past they used to say, 'Seek counsel in Abel,' and that's how they settle disputes. I am one of the peaceful and faithful in Israel. But you're trying to destroy a city that is like a mother in Israel. Why would you devour the Lord's inheritance?" Joab protested, "Never! I would never devour or demolish. That is not the case. There is a man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, who has rebelled against King David. Deliver this one man, and I will withdraw from the city." The woman replied to Joab, "Watch, his head will be thrown over the wall to you." The woman went to all the people with her wise counsel, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn, and they dispersed from the city, each to his own tent. Joab returned to the king of Jerusalem. Joab commanded the whole army of Israel. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and Pelethites. Adoram was over forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was court historian. Sheva was court secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. And in addition, Ira the Jairite was David's priest. That is the end of chapter 19. What a fun and interesting chapter 20 is. Remember, there are 3 ways that we look at Scripture. What does it say? We have to have reading comprehension. We have to read the words on the page. If we don't read the words on the page, we don't know what it says. Next, what was it saying to the people of the time? What was going on? What was the history? We have to take everything into context. We can't just read one little verse and think we know what this is about. We have to understand the players and what's going on here. And then last, what, if anything, is this saying to us today? So let's unpack what we just read. Well, we saw that there was this wicked man who did not want the Israelites to follow. He didn't want Israel following after David. He just didn't like David. And so he kind of got everybody to not follow David. He said, "Listen, we don't have anything to do with that son of Jesse, David. Don't follow him." And meanwhile, David sends this young man, Amasa. He says, "You know what? Go summon the troops of Judah and bring them back to me." Well, Amasa did not do that. He didn't do what he was told to do. Meanwhile, if you remember, we have to go back a few chapters. When David fled the palace from his son, Absalom, he left behind his concubines to guard and take care of the palace. But what happened was that Absalom raped all of the concubines, and he did it in public on the rooftop of the house. So what David has done now is he has provided for his concubines, but he's ignored them now. He's no longer in relation with them, and they live their lives as widows. Now, one thing about widows then is they were taken care of. They were taken care of by the community, by the priesthood, by good people, their families, things like that. So that's what has happened. It's just kind of a blip in the story. And while he's doing this, David is waiting for this man, Amasa, to come back. But he never comes back. So after the 3 days, he says, "You know what?" He tells Joab, he says, this guy, what was his name? This Sheba guy, he's going to do a lot more damage than my son Absalom ever did to us. We've got to put a stop to this. Basically Amasa hasn't come back, so get the guys and go. So Joab's men, he gets his men together, and they go, and they're going to go in pursuit of this Sheba guy. And along the way, he comes across him. Guess who? Amasa. Now, Joab had his belt on, his cloak, he had all kinds of stuff on, and in it was his sword. Now, his sword kind of fell out. I'm not so sure that his sword actually fell out as much as he probably let it out. And he says, "Hey, Amasa, how you doing, dude?" And he acts like he's going to go in and give him a brotherly greeting. And he's going to kiss him on the cheek and, grabs him by the beard in a friendly manner. But instead, he takes his sword and he plunges it through Amasa. So when the people see this, this guy says, "Hey, we need to follow after Joab, all right? We need to do what the king says. We need to follow after Joab, and we need to go in pursuit of this Sheba dude." Well, they find out this Sheba guy is going all over. He's to different cities. He's telling people, "We don't need anything to do with this David guy." They get to this one fortified city, and they're taking their battering rams. They find out Sheba's in this city hiding. They take their battering rams and they're banging on it, and they're going to get in there and they're going to go get Sheba. But there was a wise woman in this city, and she called out to them. She says, "Let me talk to Joab, your leader." So she goes, she talks to Joab. He says, "Look," she says, "why are you trying to destroy this inheritance of Israel? Like, God has given you this inheritance. Why are you trying to destroy it?" He says, "I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to get this Sheba guy." And she says, "I'll tell you what, this place, this Ebel, is a place where people come to seek counsel, to get judgment, to get make their wrongs right. And I'm one of those people who basically she was a wise woman who gave out wise counsel, and says to him, 'Let me take care of this, and I promise that you will have Sheba's head thrown to you, and it'll all be over with.'" And he says, "Okay." So she goes back in and she tells the people what's going on. She says, "The reason that they're attacking our walls is because they just want this guy Sheba." So they're like, better one than all. So they cut off Sheba's head. They throw it over to the wall. That's the end. They go home. And King David makes Joab commander of the whole army of Israel. Okay, so he was leading part of the Judean army, but now he's the leader of the whole Israeli army. And then they divide some things up. So some people are in charge of the labor, some people are in charge of history and things like that. And that's where we leave off in 2 Samuel chapter 20. So it's an interesting story. I don't know that I necessarily get a whole lot from that. It is incredibly impressive to me, the wisdom of this woman, that she appeals to Joab by saying, "Are you trying to destroy God's inheritance?" And explains, there's a better way of going about doing this. Let's see if we can't resolve this problem without there being any damage to the city walls. And sometimes we get pretty hot-headed, we take a bomb to kill a fly when a swatter would have done, and that's kind of what she did there. So it's a very interesting story, and I hope you learned something from it. I look forward to us moving on to the rest of the story of David, and we will do so next time we are together. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you.